Welcome back to the Family Ties podcast. Thank you for watching us and joining us again. We love it. Today you have myself, Julia, Avery, and my sister, an amazing co-host, Kelley.
Hi guys. Hi, it's Kelley here. We are still here, still kicking it, and COVID has not taken either one of us yet.
Yeah. Now I'm sick right now. I purposefully put on makeup to not look sick, but I'll tell you I'm sick. And it's not COVID. I got tested, and I got a rapid test, so it was negative. So,
nice. Congratulations
to go to
Julia.
work.
Yeah. Well, I am just trying to be extra precautious because now we have 3 people. I raised 4 fingers. We have 3 people. Oh, geez, Louise.
We have 3 people.
We have people that have come down with COVID in the office. So as of this past Friday, there was a 3rd person. So I've been tested once already, but I'm just going to be extra precautious. And I apologize, guys. My dogs are wrestling on the bed right now, and I'm sure you can hear it. All the jingling of the collars and stuff. How are you other than being sick, Julie?
I'm okay. Well, I feel like I've been hit by a train. I've been napping a lot of the day. I've been waking up early around the same time every day. I made a big breakfast this morning. I made chocolate chip muffins, really fluffy scrambled eggs with Gouda cheese, and I did some brown sugar covered bacon. It could have been better.
And I'm going to plug in my headphones, guys, because I think it might help block out the doggos. Hold on.
You guys will probably hear Kendrick. She's purring, and she'll be walking back and forth. You'll probably see her tail drift in front of the screen, make an appearance. But she's cute, so
this might help muffle a little bit of this. They're having a good time, and that's all that matters. But
that's right.
What are we going to talk about today, Julia?
So today we are going to be discussing the case of James Alex Hurley. This is where, as we've talked about last time, we're starting to do more cases that are focused on tragic incidents that have happened to these innocent children that we're trying to create exposure for and hopefully lead into making legislation type of change where we can actually make a difference and start preventing these cases from being as often and as reoccurring as they currently are. This case is especially sensitive. Fair warning, if you're very sensitive to this kind of stuff, just so you know, it's got some really horrific details in it. And it was really rough for both Kelley and I to get through.
James Alex Hurley, this story, it really was another difficult one to get through. They're all going to be difficult, but this in particular has just been weighing very heavily on my heart. But on February 4th of this year, the lifeless body of 12-year-old James Alex Hurley was recovered by law enforcement to be taken in for an autopsy. The details that unfolded once this case started to be investigated shocked and appalled law enforcement. KULR 8 News reports that Gallatin County Sheriff Brian Gutkin said that in his 27 years in law enforcement, he's never seen a case like this. It's personal, he says. It's personal to all of us. He says, it's the worst type of case that you can deal with. And I guess, you just try and find some justice for Alex. And that's exactly what our job is. So he also kind of let them know that counselors had been sent from across the county to West Yellowstone in the school the boy attended. So they're the counselors are also supporting the law enforcement members who are part of this case. That's how upsetting this has been. So just keep that in mind. Cops, they have to see this stuff. And I'm sure, even if they have to try and approach it as emotionless as they can, it still affects them deeply. And they,
because they either also have kids of their own or have nieces and nephews and, have
Yeah.
friends who have kids, and seeing this stuff to other kids really hits home really
Yeah.
hard. And,
Yeah.
I think that's
So
also why it's so personal.
yeah, I mean, so us just reading this is upsetting. I can't imagine being somebody who had to investigate this.
Mm-mm.
So keep that in your back pocket. I know that we've been tough on cops in the past, but their job is by no means easy. And
No. And in
can I
fact,
just
we've
take a
already discussed that they wear too many hats. Like they're
yeah,
overstretched. I mean, you're bound to
yeah,
have, I mean, so regardless of what we've said negatively in the past, they are also extremely overworked and
yeah.
overstretched in areas that they're not specialized in or specialized to handle or equipped to handle even emotionally.
Yes. So, with that being said, we're going to tell you the tragic story of the events that led up to the murder of James Alex Hurley, who I believe they just kind of call him Alex. So we'll just call him Alex going forward, or maybe we'll go interchange between the names. But just so you know, it looks like Alex is his primary name. But that led up to the murder of Alex, but also dive into the pattern of torture and abuse that spanned the last 2 years of this little boy's life. This abuse ranges from beatings, systemic torture in many forms, starvation and constant violence, and dehumanization by all four of the family members he was living with at the end of his life. So, strap in.
Yeah. So something that is a common thread with like the story that we discussed last week is that the family members who are responsible for like the guardians for the child from the get-go came up with excuses for the kids' behavior to almost justify any adverse reactions or anything that would come up later. Like, for instance, last week they were saying that the child was self-mutilating at age 1 and 2, but that set their framework for what they thought was a good excuse anytime she was
Mm-hmm.
found with bruises or marks or whatever. Same thing in like this case. The family members were saying Alex was troubled, that he was suicidal, that he had to be on suicide watch, that he was acting out, all of these things. Um, and it doesn't line up with what school officials or his teachers had to say about his behavior when he was at school. And that type of behavior isn't like, it doesn't switch on and off. It's usually pretty consistent. So it's another red flag as to they're setting up their excuses to try to justify anything that would end up coming up and happening with Alex.
Yes. So, in the events that led up to this, I'm going to just we're going to start it. We're clearly starting at the end where, he's been killed. But the event, I think that was the catalyst to all of this happening, was them pulling him from school. So
Yeah.
let's just keep in mind that this is a recurring theme also in all of these cases, that it's not necessarily that these parents have been homeschooling the whole time and that it's for religious reasons. Oftentimes this is used as a way to cover up their actions or their abuse so
Not
that
only that,
questions
just
aren't asked.
to isolate the children. So,
Mm-hmm.
because like we also talked about last week, school officials are obligated to contact child services, social services, when um, things they observe seeing kind of out of the norm or concerning. So when you take them out of that environment, there's no one to report you except
Yeah.
maybe your neighbors, but usually they don't because they like to mind their own business, it seems like. And in this case,
All right, a little background that we found is that Alicia Davis is his mother, Alex's mother. They had lived in Cleveland until he was about 10 years old. And then after that, he went to live in Montana with his father. So basically, Alex went to live with his father before his dad passed away in 2018, but his grandparents ended up keeping him in their custody after that. So the events that were leading up to this is that his mom which hopefully we can get in touch with and kind of get her side of the story. But the way I'm understanding this is that due to some financial reasons, she just thought it was best if she had Alex go live with his father in Montana. And, at some point, I believe it was 2013, that his dad ended up getting into an ATV accident and he was pretty badly injured. And then he was left paralyzed. So his father then eventually died from an
infection.
So his father, Tate, we'll just call him Tate, was paralyzed in an ATV accident in 2013. And then he died in January 2018 after developing an infection which made his heart give out. So I don't know how that affected this poor boy, but things are already off to a bad start. So after that, he ended up going to live with his grandparents from his dad's side, because they also lived in Montana. And so the grandma is Patricia Batts. And then there was James Sasser Jr., who I guess is Patricia's then husband. And then there was also James Sasser III, who was at the time 14 years old. And then I believe there was a 6-year-old kid there as well, one of Sasser's little brothers, as well as the older sister, which is the aunt. So what we have here is we have the grandma, Patricia Batts, the grandpa, sort of, James Sasser Jr. Then you have James Sasser III, which is the 14-year-old boy, which is James Alex's uncle. And then James Alex's aunt, who I don't remember her name, she was also living in the household, as well as Sasser's younger brother, who doesn't really have a lot to do with the story, but he lives there. And according to all of the testimony and all of the evidence, all of them, except for the 6-year-old, had some hand in abusing this kid, torturing this kid, verbally, physically abusing, all of those things.
And there was no adult in the room to call out this behavior or to seek outside assistance for issues that they were claiming was happening. Like everybody was guilty, equally involved in this situation.
They're all guilty in some way, shape, or form in the abuse and torture that made up the last 2 years of this kid's life. But specifically, the 14-year-old uncle is pretty much primarily responsible for the murder of this boy.
The physical aspect.
James Alex.
Yeah.
Yes. So, I mean, it's hard to say who's most at fault here because they're all so just guilty.
I definitely hold Patricia Batts and Sasser Jr. accountable the most because they were the adults. They should have taken Sasser III, the 14-year-old, to get help for his violence, and they should have sought out assistance, medical assistance, for what we're going to end up discussing is ADD for Alex.
Yeah. So Alex has ADHD, and we're going to go ahead and preface all of this by saying that, it was clear that he had some behavioral issues. They weren't necessarily violent in nature, but they're common symptoms of ADHD. And his teacher ended up, saying that right before they had pulled him out of school, he had actually been improving his, with his ADHD. He was getting better, not worse. And the family made a claim, the grandma made a claim that they pulled the boy out of school because he touched a girl inappropriately.
Which
And
there's no evidence or
none.
valid claims to that statement. Nothing
So
to back that up.
to build on this, the grandma, uncles, etc., claimed the boy was troubled. He was hearing voices. He was suicidal. But the detective who is in charge of this case states that even with these claims of James Alex and his alleged behavioral issues, he was not able to locate any record of the family reporting the claimed behavior to law enforcement or the family attempting to get medical or psychiatric help for Hurley. So all of this is unsubstantiated. There's no way to prove it. The only thing that everybody can agree on is the fact that the kid had severe ADHD, which is treatable. And it's definitely not something that makes this kid unlovable.
Exactly.
So,
and it explains a lot of behavioral issues. And if they have such a problem with it, there are ways to treat it. You have to seek professionals. And when you don't, then it's your fault that he's continuing to be troubled. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Well, what's also really obvious about this is that the grandma, Patricia Batts, has a lot of she has a history of violence, we will say. She has a history of abuse. I don't know if all of the kids in that household or even James Alex's dad, if his dad experienced abuse. These are questions that I have. But apparently, this kid wasn't the first to be abused. And it seems like she raised these other kids to not only be violent, but also to take pleasure in hurting and abusing someone and dehumanizing
that stuff
others.
Is learned. I believe a majority of that stuff is learned.
So Sasser III may have been the one to kill him, but it was very encouraged. And there is video evidence that shows that all the family took pleasure in this, and they enjoyed it so much that they made videos of it on their cell phones. Why else? I mean, it's not just this boy picking on this kid when no one's looking. It's a family affair.
It's a family affair.
Yeah.
It's a group effort. Mm-hmm. Everyone. That's why I really hold everyone involved.
Yeah.
Accountable for this.
So it's clear through texts and different quotes that Sasser III hated this kid, and he took pleasure in beating him and abusing him. But they would make these wild claims. And one of the claims was that James Alex had run into the corner of the entertainment center, causing an injury to his head and having a gash that bled greatly. Patricia Batts, Sasser, and the uncle stated that due to the boy's erratic behavior, they had to constantly watch his every move, including someone staying up at night to make sure he was not going to harm himself or someone else.
See, that's unnecessary. If you're having to do that, you should have gone, if that was true, they should have gotten help for his suicidal behavior. And the fact that they didn't shows that they weren't concerned about him, because you can't trust yourself to stay up, have someone stay up all night to watch, make sure that doesn't happen. If you're truly concerned about someone's well-being, you're going to seek help. You're not just going to be like, oh, well, I'll have Sasser Jr. stay up and watch him tonight or whatever. It's like
you take third watch. It's like,
it doesn't work.
This
isn't
way. The night watch in Game of Thrones. Like, if it really was that bad.
Yeah.
Which it wasn't, no. There would be some records indicating that. And the boy probably wouldn't have been able to have done anything normal at school and he wouldn't be improving at school if this was the case. If he was just that much of a loose cannon, more people would know about this, which is why, they pulled him from school to where they could perpetuate these stories. And another nonsense story that they perpetrated before February 4th, did we say? Yes, before February 4th, when the boy died, as a precursor excuse to what they were dealing with.
They're trying to set up the stage for this violent, outlandish kid.
But just listen to this and tell me if it makes sense. So all three of them stated that on or about January 27th of this year, the 14-year-old Uncle Sasser woke up during the night and saw James Alex standing over the grandma with a knife. So he tackled the boy and punched him several times on his body and in the head. The detective noted in court documents that the boy, James Alex, was about 103 pounds and 5'3", while the 14-year-old Uncle Sasser was approximately 300 pounds and 6 feet tall. That's a big ass kid.
That's a big boy. That's a big kid.
Why are they scared of this little kid when they've got this big bulldog to take care of them?
It's got to be complex. Oh my God.
So
that also raises a couple of questions for me though, real quick. Like,
yeah,
what are the sleeping arrangements? How do you wake up in the middle of the night and just go, where's grandma? Well, let me go see where grandma's sleeping and then find him standing over the bed. Like, how did that come about? If that's true, what were the sleeping arrangement? How close was everybody? And you know what, to be fair,
the odds of him catching him in the act like that, they have to be that was perfect timing. Like, wow.
I know. But to be fair, I wouldn't blame Alex if he was contemplating just taking care of shit himself because nobody else is going to. I'm not saying that I believe that claim because I don't. I'm just saying, in all fairness, I think he was kind of justified for acting out and protecting himself, if you will.
And the reason we're telling this out of order is I've read a lot of different news articles and stuff about this case, but it's important to set the scene for you because we can't just start with the story and then you'll be in complete confusion because none of it makes any sense in the realm of how the family tells this story. So I want to make sure that we're kind of setting this up. Maybe we'll set something up and then we'll go back in time a little bit and then we'll go ahead because I think all these things will help you guys figure out as we go along the inconsistencies with the story that they're telling the detectives and the police, and what actually happened. So, Julia, what did they find? What did the autopsy show?
So, during a search of the Batts house, detectives observed an indentation in the wall that was consistent with a head being hit into the wall with a trace amount of blood. Later, after a more thorough search, the detectives located forensic evidence that indicated that very large amounts of blood had been previously cleaned from the floor and various other surfaces. During interviews, each member of the family denied a large amount of blood ever existing in the house. So,
interesting. So now let's visit the night of the killing. So Sasser III, the 14-year-old uncle, was interviewed by detectives and said multiple altercations took place between him and the boy, the last one occurring on Saturday, February 1st, 2020, around midday. He denied hitting the boy in the head with a paddle and that they had a fight on January 27th, 2020 that was even worse. So here's the interesting thing.
Real quick. And there's no evidence of them taking Alex to the hospital in between all of these incidents where he's probably getting head damage and brain damage, probably having concussions, probably getting more injuries leading up to the final day. So just keep that in mind as well. So all these things, they're not giving him any medical attention, and he's a child.
Yeah. So Madison Sasser, who's the 18-year-old aunt, I think she's 18, she told detectives that she watched the Super Bowl on February 2nd with friends in West Yellowstone, and everyone was asleep when she arrived home that evening. She reported that Hurley was asleep on the floor of the living room. totally normal, and that the grandmother was asleep on the couch. So Madison told the detective that, to her knowledge, no altercations occurred after she arrived home, but also that she had texted friends saying that she believed her brother, Sasser III, had killed Hurley. So those two things are conflicting. You say you walked
Very
home
conflicting.
and there's a kid, he's sleeping on the floor. And, you know, with what happens next and knowing how long this happened and how the boy was, what was happening all night long, she would have known that at the time she got home, he was still alive. Think about it for a second. And I don't believe for a second. So, you know, she thinks that he's dead, but then she also says that he was sleeping on the floor. Those two things obviously don't add up.
That's her trying to disassociate herself from any guilt or involvement by telling the police she believed he was sleeping. But then, you know, as you're like spilling out more details, you tend to give yourself away. And then the fact that she indicates she texted other concerns that are, I mean, to text a friend and be like, pretty sure my family member's dead. Like, that's extreme. Like, so you can't go from thinking that they're asleep to then thinking that they've been murdered without being implicated somehow. And so that was her guilt. That was extra details coming out of there. I don't think she meant to say that. I really don't, because I think she was trying to set it to be like, I think it was asleep. Then I texted. My friend was like, you know, maybe he's sad.
So
hoping that
all of these stories, Julia, from all the family members indicate at some level that they're aware of exactly what happened.
Yeah.
So Sasser Jr., the grandpa figure, so the one who's with Patricia Batts, he reported that he had been sleeping during the Super Bowl, but stated that his son, Sasser III, and Hurley had gotten into an altercation. So this altercation, guys, is the altercation that resulted in his death. So don't forget that. And it was so bad, and yet they didn't do anything. He reported that he awoke on the morning of February the 3rd, Monday, and was on his way to work when he learned from Batts of the boy's death. And Julia, do not let me forget to circle back around to that, because I have a theory. I have a theory on that. So then, what does Granny Batts say? What does lovely Granny Batts have to say for herself?
So she told the detectives that she had been sleeping during parts of the Super Bowl, but awoke when she heard Sasser III and Alex fighting. And she awoke to Sasser III striking Alex with the paddle, but she denied that Alex was hit in the head. So she kind of tried to like minimize the fight during the Super Bowl, saying that they had a significant fight on January 27th, where Sasser III had beat Alex, stating that the fight was a bad fight and it was a bloodbath. And so that was in her words. And
I mean,
for her to say it's a bloodbath, I can't even imagine how horrific it had to have been, because they've tried to downplay everything. And for her to say it was a bloodbath.
How many times have they cleaned up blood from inside of this house? Maybe they didn't remember. Alex's blood. Yes. So she also reported that Alex slept on the floor of the living room the night of February 2nd and was mumbling and moaning throughout the night. She reported finding Alex's body on the morning of February 3rd and that he was deceased. She reportedly called 911 upon finding the body. So this, Julia, is where I'm circling back. I'm circling back to the fact that she already knew. You know, she heard the altercation. She was there when it took place. The boy is on the floor in the living room, according to police investigators, in a pool of blood. You're not going to think he's just chilling out on the floor. She laid there on the couch all night, hearing him moan and die in his own blood on the floor. And you know why this also circles back to what the grandpa says is that, you know, he also knew about this altercation. He heard it himself as well. And, you know, they allowed him to die slowly all night. They knew he was going to die. They were just waiting it out. So the uncle, of course, you know, yeah, on Monday morning as he's getting to work, she's like, yeah, he's finally dead. That's exactly how this happened.
Yeah.
They all knew.
He knew exactly what happened because, you know, I'm sure he had to walk through the living room at some point to exit the house, you know? And I'm sure.
Can't step in that blood. You can't get that blood on your shoes.
If you step over the body, I'm sure you probably was like, eh.
On his way still out. Breathing. You just let me know when it's over.
Yeah, that's the impression I get too.
What? And guys, this is a 12-year-old boy.
A child.
And don't forget the 6-year-old in the house. He also,
observing, I guarantee you, all of this.
Hearing everything, probably walking in and out of the living room himself.
Yeah. What was his testimony? And where is he now? I hope he's not with another family member because it seems to be a family issue. It's all of them. It's like, you know.
So
I'm concerned for him too.
Yeah.
Not only for his well-being, but for how he's going to be treating people when he gets older, because to have seen all of that go down. I know there was not 1 second that they probably had him exit the room for them to do something. He witnessed it all.
Well, remember, Julia, in one of the videos that we're going to tell people about, he is seen walking in and out of the frame, like totally oblivious to the torture that is happening right in front of him.
Because he sees it all the time. It's nothing. Like this is just what goes on.
This is life
around him.
Yeah.
This is, you know.
And maybe he's thinking, I'm glad it's him and not me. So all this to say, guys, is that Madison arriving home she had to have seen the blood and potentially the not dead yet James Alex on the floor, but she did nothing.
She could have been like, hey man, you okay? Nothing. Yeah. Just be like, oh, he's there. Just observing, you know, not giving a shit.
I want to know from Patricia, what was more entertaining, the Super Bowl or listening and watching this kid die?
Her grandson.
Yeah.
We keep talking about him as like the kid. He is her grandson. Her grandson was moaning in pain as he was dying slowly, feet away from her, while she watched football.
And took a nap. You know, because she's
tired. All of the above.
It's been a busy day.
God damn it. Gotta put her feet up. Grandma's tired, bitches. No, like, I mean, how detached, how absolutely detached she is emotionally. Like, that is just crazy. Well, not just detached.
It brings her pleasure because of other things that we find out about her. So I guarantee you this has been a pattern over her life. But like we've talked about before also, these things are a pattern that get passed down just like genetics from one generation to the other. So what's next, Julia?
The Gallatin County Sheriff's Office ended up arresting James Sasser Jr., the grandfather, Patricia Batts, the grandma, and the juvenile boy, James Sasser III, who was 14. And he was the uncle of Alex. So they were all arrested for the offense of deliberate homicide and found guilty. The deputy ended up finding circumstances surrounding Alex's death suspicious, and he requested assistance from the detective division after he observed that Alex had multiple wounds and contusions all over his body. Investigators ended up finding videos of Alex, 12, being tortured by members of his family before his death, which Kelley kind of brought up before. There are videos of that.
So these videos include like one that was found from December 12th of last year, shows It was on Patricia's phone, guys. Let's also,
let's start calling her grandma, just to add to how fucked up this whole situation is. Grandma had videos of her grandson being tortured by her son.
And we'll get into what she said about him to others, but they seized all of their cell phones and found a lot of evidence on all of them. But this particular video on December 12th on Grandma's phone shows the boy doing forced jumping jacks while holding his buttock area, crying and saying he had to go to the bathroom. Patricia, Granny, reportedly can be heard in the video mocking him. Then on January 10th of 2020 of this year, a video on Granny's phone shows James Alex standing near the garage door, bent over, holding his head in his hands, rocking back and forth, saying no and moaning. Another video, time-stamped 2 minutes later, shows the boy crying and saying, "Ow, it hurts so bad."
Oh, God.
Several videos show the boy being forced to sit against a wall or door to the garage in a squat position. Several other videos show the boy being forced to do jumping jacks as punishment. On January 10th of this year, a video on Sasser Jr, the 14-year-old's phone, shows that Alex sitting against the door to the garage crying, "I fucking hate this." A larger male can be seen on the video hitting the boy with a piece of wood. The boy is heard screaming about committing suicide. So this person who is hitting him with the wood is also charged in this later. He's a friend of Sasser III. This is Gage. He's 18 and also large, very large boy. So, I mean, now we have video evidence of this.
So they're not only violent, but they're also dumb. The amount of evidence that
they're all enjoying it so much that they're inviting friends into this. It's not just so, it could have started with Granny, but then Granny brought in the only person I don't know of specifically being physically abusive is Sasser Jr., but he allowed all this to happen under his roof.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure Patricia was overbearing enough with him, because it seems like this is her deal. And you know how men get real weak.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
when they're around I mean,
well, in our household,
yeah, I know what I'm saying is sounding really bad, but I mean, she was probably guilty of domestic violence. She probably talked down to him, and he was probably just,
oh yeah,
I don't know.
I guarantee you her abuse was directed at every member of her family, just some worse than others.
Yeah.
But on January 17th of this year, a video on Granny's phone shows Alex has cuts on his face and wrist. Again, on Grandma's phone, shows the boy against the front wall of the house, pinned between the wall and the couch, with his arms in the air above his head. So he reportedly does not have a shirt on and has red marks and injuries to his shoulder. But listen, Julie, just put your hands above your head for a minute. Just hold them there this whole episode. Don't put them down. Okay? Or else I'm going to beat the shit out of you. That's exactly what's happening here. The boy can reportedly be seen starting to fall asleep, resting his head against the window trim. Grandma can be heard saying, "Wake up, get your fucking head off there." So this is like, just imagine.
And this is all, just to think about this real quick too, this is all after his father's died. And he's a child dealing with his father's death and probably missing his mom.
Mm-hmm. So, and he's been there so long that he's trying to prop himself up, but he's exhausted. Like, I challenge anyone out there to try this for themselves and see how long they can make it. And if you make it to the point where you can't even help but fall asleep, you know that you've been doing this for hours or even a full day. Okay. So in another video, Grandma can be heard telling the boy to keep his hands apart and open in the air. Alex is crying and visibly shaking, saying that he hurts and his head hurts. His head, because they beat the shit out of his head all the time. And Grandma can be heard reportedly saying, "Who cares?" On January 27th, a video also on Granny's phone, like how much storage does Granny have and how much has she actually deleted from there, shows Alex wearing underwear, only wearing underwear, being forced to stand in front of fans in the dining room. Throughout the video, Grandma is heard berating the boy, while the little 6-year-old uncle is seen acting as if it were a normal occurrence. It's like, what are they going to do
not
next?
only with the fans, but there was a statement where she had said she was spraying him with water while he was in front of the fans bare. And she was like, that's what you do with cats that act up, right? Like what?
I mean,
No, I don't do that to my cats. But you're not dealing with a cat, and
it's not an animal, it's a human being. And the fact that this uncle thinks that this is normal. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that you do to prisoners of war. Like,
I bet you she did this shit to Sasser the Third, and as he got to be a bigger boy, and this new kid got in the house, and the fact that also it's not her child, so she's there's that detachment in addition to the violence that's already going on. I bet you he was that, I mean, he was trained for that, and he was probably bullied just as much and abused just as much. And what do people usually do with their abuse? In a lot of cases, you turn the tables around, so you have the power in your hands.
Yes. And if we're going to make references to animals here, just imagine somebody beating their dog, making them brutal and mean, and then fighting them against another dog. It's like you beat anger, hate, and violence into somebody, and it's going to trickle to someone else.
Yeah.
But yeah. Another video from January 17th of this year on Sasser the Third's phone shows Alex standing in front of the fan in his underwear, and Grandma can allegedly be heard telling him, "Oh, you're not even a human. You're some kind of thing." So when detectives located videos of Alex from 2 years ago, so like right around the time he started living with Grandma, Alex looks to be healthy and well fed. And then at the time of his death, detectives observed that Hurley appeared to be emaciated and that a good portion of the food in the house was locked away and the boy would not have access to it. So, one more thing. On January 17th. So, okay, January 17th, he died on the February 3rd. So on 17th, Sasser the Third texted the grandpa at 8:07 in the morning, "I'm gonna end up killing him today." I feel like this is important to mention. And I also feel like it's important to mention that so there's also premeditation here. And so then you're also leading up to this on January 27th, Sasser the Third, he searched for what was the longest coma. And then on the 2nd, so the day before he ended up killing Alex, he searched for what are the symptoms of brain injury, concussion symptoms, and how do you tell if someone has a concussion? So, yeah.
Do you ever feel, as you read these, just absolutely depressed and enraged at the same time?
Yes.
Like, I just want to fall apart into a puddle under the floor. But at the same time, I want to exact revenge.
So that fits very nicely. So the next bit of what we're talking about is going to fit very nicely in with what Julia was saying about how this makes you feel and how enraged this makes you feel. And I struggle with the whole concept of the death penalty. I really truly do. I generally think it's a bad idea and I don't like it. But there are very rare circumstances in which I believe that it is the right option. And this may be one of them.
Yeah. Patricia, the grandmother, who's charged in the death of her 12-year-old grandson, she ended up telling investigators that her own children learned to beat and torture Alex by watching her. So new documents found filed in the case revealed that statement, and prosecutors have also said they may seek the death penalty for the grandmother, which I'm not going to lie, that sounds pretty good to me.
And so there she was right there, admitting what Julie and I had been fearing this whole time. Yeah. She taught them all of this.
Yeah.
But the question is, Julia, did they learn all this by watching her beat just him? Was this just on him? That's at the point at which, like, it could be. Maybe Sasser III never was beaten. Maybe he learned all this violence and they directed all of their anger and hatred to this boy, Alex. So that is the question here, guys, that we don't have the answer to.
No. The only actual physical evidence that we have shows it only happening to Alex. He was like the pawn.
I'm inclined to
punching
believe
bag
that this was all just occurring to him.
I'm interested to hear from Alex's mom, because I want to know, what his dad was like, and did he ever direct anger at her domestically? Why did they separate in the first place? I know that's really personal to ask, but I'm thinking, that's how his mom's been. She has to have been this way for a long time, though. I don't think that they just watched and learned her do that just to Alex, because it takes a long time to learn that kind of behavior and it become that normal, and you really take it from there and go as seriously as they did, as seriously hardcore. Like, she had to have abused her own children. I'm just wondering, like, was his dad beaten? Did his dad take anything out on his mom?
Yeah.
Was his dad domestically violent? And when he died, like, I don't know.
How much did the boy have to witness? Like, how
much
his
whole lifetime?
Over his lifetime to somehow for this to continue to happen. So anyways, what's Granny charged with?
So Granny was charged with deliberate homicide, aggravated kidnapping, criminal child endangerment, and strangulation of partner or family member, all felonies, in the death of 12-year-old James Alex Hurley.
So where's the strangulation coming into play?
Yeah, we haven't gotten over any evidence that talks about strangulation, so that does make me curious. It's all been about beatings.
Oh, I think I read something that does indicate that she was throttling Alex. So
really?
Yeah. I don't remember which article I read it in.
This is why I want to get court documents. I want to see the evidence.
I want to see all of it. Yeah, I do. And this is something so recent, guys, that we may talk about this again.
Oh, yeah.
Because, I mean, at the time that most of these were written, Gage, the 18-year-old, had not been implicated in this as well. But, I mean, this happened in February of this year. So things are still, court cases are still being waged, and trials and all of this stuff are still ongoing. So I will be eager to hear from.
A while. Those always
Yeah.
take a long time. So then we move on to the grandfather, James Sasser Jr. He was charged with deliberate homicide and criminal child endangerment, both which are felonies. James Sasser III, Alex's 14-year-old uncle, is charged with felony deliberate homicide. And then finally, you've got Gage Rush, the 18-year-old friend who was charged with felony assault on a minor after prosecutors said he was seen on a video hitting the boy with a paddle. Prosecutors filed charging documents in the district court shortly after Sasser III's hearing that revealed new details about the months before Alex's death. Those details included a neighbor's claim that Patricia Sasser III and Alex's 18-year-old aunt, who has been very quiet throughout this whole thing, beat and dragged Alex back to their home on Buffalo Drive near Hebgen Lake after Alex tried running away in December.
So, okay, we've outlined January for you, where all the videos of torture are kind of mainly focused. And then, so in December, he's actively trying to run away. So in the 2 years of his life, things are progressively getting more and more violent.
Yeah.
For him.
Yep. Seeing that, does a neighbor report this? No, it doesn't seem like they do. The neighbors seem to have just witnessed it and been like, I guess,
be like, oh yeah, we did see that thing. Remember back in December? Oh yeah, they were beating the shit out of that kid, weren't they?
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, for the neighbors, that has to be a normal occurrence. For the neighbors not to say something as well, because I'm sure they hear a bunch of stuff from that house, and they're probably very just kind of desensitized to anything that comes from that other house.
Yeah.
To just to be able to just wave that off and be like, well, that's unfortunate, I guess.
So I'm going to circle back around to something you said, Julia, about the cats thing. So grandma says she pulled Alex out of school in September of that year to homeschool. So things had gotten to such a level, guys, they were so bad that they're like, well, we can't keep having him go to school looking like this, So they yank him out. And she claims that it was because he got in trouble for groping a girl, according to documents. But that was also disproven because detectives and the principal at the school denied that ever happening, ever. So lies. Grandma struggled with the task and said she would make Alex do jumping jacks and wall sits if she caught him not doing his schoolwork. Guarantee you she's not teaching the kid. So here's another instance of what really riles Julie and I about these cases. It's like they yank kids out of school or they homeschool them, and yet they're not being taught. They're not being given an education. It's just a cover. It's a cover up for physical and emotional abuse. And, they're just doing their best to cover it up. And the fact that they're using homeschooling
it's a form of kidnapping. That,
yes,
to me, is a form of kidnapping.
Yeah.
If you think about it.
So grandma told detectives that Alex drove her nuts and that his behavior got worse, but, she was unable to explain how. So in addition, grandma's also saying that Alex always got out at night. He's trying to escape. No wonder maybe they did have a night watch because they didn't want him to run away.
It wasn't a suicide watch.
It was just
because do they give a shit about his well-being?
Away.
No. I think maybe if they didn't want him to commit suicide, it's because they wanted to do it themselves. They're like, no, you're not going to get away from this.
Don't you think you're going to? So grandma admitted to detectives that she allowed Sasser III to punish Alex when she wasn't around, but said that she was unaware of the kind of punishment he was doing. Although they all heard all the altercations and the bloodbath.
Have videos of it.
and the bloodbath that happened in January. So
they're all telling lies. They're full of lies. They're really terrible liars.
yes. So then
like they had all
police
of this
also
time to try to get their story straight, and they can't even. It's sad.
Because it's been going on so long. They may be able to explain 1 week, but they can't explain the 2 years.
And then everybody on the same track with their stories. No,
yeah.
Too much.
So in charging documents, police find that Alex's aunt so Madison, the girl who came into the house and said he was sleeping on the floor, but then also said that she was pretty sure her brother killed him. She had messaged her boyfriend that Alex was like a piece of shit off my, well, I don't know what expletive she uses, but a piece of blank off of my blank shoe, and that she wished Alex would die in the woods. The detective asked Granny if Sasser III and the aunt learned it was okay to discipline Alex from her. And Granny replied, I guess. So here's the crux of this issue, guys. Grandma said Alex was entitled to $725 a month for due to Tate, the father's social security benefits. So Granny said the family used that money to help with bills. The only reason they are holding this kid hostage, and I mean holding this kid hostage,
is for that paycheck.
Is for that money.
And it's not even theirs.
It's not theirs. The kid's not theirs. None of it's legal. So the grandfather, he admits, maybe I verbally abused Alex, and maybe he thought that Granny's punishments for Alex were excessive. His excuse for all of this, which I also think is bullshit and I don't believe, he said he was trying to move out of the house and that his intention was to divorce Patricia and raise the kids without her. Sure.
I think he fantasized about it, because I do believe he was a domestic abuse victim. Do I think that he's also responsible as an adult for what happened to the children and not reporting anything? Yes. But I do believe that this was a domestic abuse situation. And it's usually harder for people to grasp it and believe it when it's a female against a male.
Yeah.
And domestic abuse really fucks people up, fucks reason and logic up. Like, what's as simple as saying, well, why didn't you just get out of there? It's not as simple. Like, they work into your brain. Like, these people who are master manipulators, and you find yourself deeply entrenched in this relationship, and then you stay and you feel stuck, and then you feel powerless. Yeah. And then you got the kids that are starting to behave just like her now. And it's like, well, fuck. I'm not giving him an out on this at all. I'm just saying it's good to be aware of that aspect, that emotional and mental aspect that comes with being a domestic abuse victim, because I believe he was.
So the school superintendent that we mentioned earlier, he said that Alex had behavioral problems typical of a child with severe ADHD, but that those problems improved throughout the year. Flanagan said he was not aware of any issues that would cause Grandma to remove Alex from school, and denied knowing that Alex sexually assaulted another student. So, more lies being totally debunked as we go. So the police said in charging documents that a neighbor of the family reported hearing screaming and seeing Alex run as fast as he could out of the house in December. So back to these neighbors, it's worse than what Julia described. So in this report, the neighbor said that the aunt, Madison, and Grandma, they caught Alex. Okay, picture this. They're all running after him. The whole family is fucking running. But since Sasser III is such a big fucking kid, he can't keep up. So the aunt, Madison, and Granny catch Alex, and they hold him until Sasser III could catch up. And then they allowed Sasser III to drag Alex back to the house as fast as he could while punching Alex in the face periodically. So this person says that they witnessed the aunt and grandma watch the uncle Sasser III beat on Alex and did nothing to stop him. But
well, they not only did nothing to stop him, they held him down to hand him over to him for that to happen.
Yes.
Like they
were encouraging this. So grandma saying she didn't know how bad this was is all bullshit.
Oh, definitely bullshit.
So here's the part, Julia, that I mentioned earlier. So cell phone footage submitted to the court showed grandma and Sasser III hitting Alex with a wooden paddle and strangling him.
And then,
in addition to that, they were starving him and padlocking the cupboards, while Sasser III is over 300 pounds and is only 14 fucking years old.
We've already talked about this before real quick, but it reminds me of, like, you know, the Dudleys from Harry Potter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Just two more. If that was turned into a horror movie, that would be this. If just Harry with the Dudleys or the Dursleys, right?
Mm-hmm. Dudley Dursley.
If that whole, like, just living situation was turned into a horror film, that would be this kid's experience here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Hogwarts would just be the escape in his head that he would go to deal with his reality.
Yes. So
I want to see that version of Harry Potter.
I just was thinking about that in my head. Like, maybe that's the thing that I do, is recreate like a horror version of this. And Harry goes to learn magic so that he can practice black magic upon them. Anyways.
No, but like he only does that. Like, Hogwarts is fictional. Like,
I know.
That's his escape.
Dang, Julie.
That's what I'm saying.
Let's write a script.
Like, that's what I'm saying, is like that it's all fake and the whole Hogwarts thing is fake, and that's what he creates in his mind to escape his reality.
Damn it, Julia.
That's what I'm saying.
Let's work on that. That's actually super amazing.
I'd like that probably more than Harry Potter. Just because I can kind of relate to that. I would have my own stories I'd go to in my head growing up.
The voiceover, you know, on the preview would say, you've seen the other side of the story. Now you get the truth. We all grew up and know Harry Potter, but did you know you actually don't know Harry Potter?
Oh, man.
The most exciting bit of fan fiction ever written. So in an interview with police, the 14-year-old Sasser III admitting to kicking Alex's head several times in the 24 to 36 hours before his death, which would also kind of explain why he was looking up and Googling, you know, how long is the longest coma and head trauma and things of that nature. Brutal. So then an autopsy revealed that Alex died from head trauma after Sasser III, who was 6 feet tall, weighing 300 pounds, got into a bad fight. So what is Uncle Sasser facing for all of this? Sasser III.
Well, it was reported that Judge Brown sentenced Sasser III on the spot, sentencing him to stay in juvenile detention until he reaches the age of 18.
So that's 4 years.
Okay, 4 years of juvenile detention. Following that punishment, he's then required to be on probation until he is 21 years old. So that's like another 4 years.
But he'll be out. He'll be living his life.
So it's like a 3 year. So, right. Yeah, he'll be out living his life for like 3 years, but on probation, 3 years after juvenile detention. And then it says, according to officials, Sasser III will not be on the violent offender registry list somehow. I don't know why.
Maybe because he's not an adult.
But when he turns 18, he should be.
I agree.
So apparently he's supposed to remain in mental health counseling during only the period of detainment. That should be if he's going to be free when he gets out. That should be a continuous.
That should be part of the probation.
That not only the probation, but even after that, he should be required to check in.
And we've talked about trying kids as adults and how we disagree with that. So I understand what this judge is trying to do here, but what you can do to make sure that this doesn't happen again or happen to maybe somebody that he dates or marries, if anybody would even look at him or touch him, is to say, okay, all these things above, and then once probation is over at 21, you have to be retried and see if we want to pursue, how have you behaved? Like, how is your mental health counseling going? How are all these things? Check back in with the progress. And if enough progress hasn't been made, maybe you get tried as an adult now.
Yeah.
Are you beating kids up in juvie? Like, are you being violent? So there has to, I don't know why there isn't that cushion of.
This is so lenient. And he literally murdered Alex, and he stated in text messages to his dad that he was wanting to kill him, and he was making searches on the internet for things that lined up with exactly what he did. This is so lenient. Okay, some juvie detention, probation after that, just 3 years.
But he has a really big, he's gonna be working to pay off all kinds of stuff in restitution, right? Buttload of restitution.
Oh, well, he's gonna be paying a whopping $500 restitution fine to the Crime Victims Compensation Fund. That right there to me is just a huge slap in the face to the Crime Victims Compensation Fund. I would be like, you know what? I don't want that from you. I don't want that. That's offensive.
It is offensive. Now, I realize, guys, that this is all still kind of ongoing. A little tidbit is that we will be speaking with the mother of Alex in our next episode. And so we are looking forward to getting some more details for you and seeing kind of where this case lies, where the court and the trial is kind of going well or badly in her opinion. But it seems that her side of the story, as told by the news, which we will dive into with her later, is that she had begun the legal process to try and get her child back when he had died. So I'm wondering if all this, she had been trying to reach and speak to Alex since the summer of 2019, but grandma was preventing her from being in contact with the kids. So in addition,
I bet you that escalated as well because they didn't want her taking their paycheck away, and they didn't, because they're like, getting that money from him.
If we aren't going to get this money, he's going to be dead. I'd rather him be dead than us not get this money.
Then you get it.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So the mom also claimed that she is pretty confident that the only reason that grandma ever wanted Alex Hurley around was so that they could profit from his child support checks, which is a pretty fair assessment here. She is stated as saying, "I'm surprised they called 911. Had that not happened, I wonder what they would have done. They probably would have hid his body up in the mountains and kept collecting that stupid check. Stupid $700 a month. I think that's why they wanted to keep him. It's stupid. Ain't no money worth it." Amen.
Mm-hmm.
She says that I barely make ends meet. I barely make enough to be able to pay my own way in life. Same, Alicia. Same.
Yeah.
But she says, I wouldn't keep a child just for the money. Children deserve more than what we're giving.
Exactly. Which is why I'm wondering if she had given him up in the first place because of that.
That's what I'm feeling very strongly, and I could be wrong.
And just
But
the amount of guilt that she's got to be feeling, I can't even comprehend. Just, you know, giving up your baby.
because you think maybe that'll be a better life for your kid, more provided. And
Yeah.
oh, look, there's family there. He's got uncles and aunts that, he'll be
He's
able to
surrounded
hang
by
out
his
with.
family. Yeah.
Yeah. I can understand how that decision was made, and I can't say I wouldn't do the same. Life is really hard, guys.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing her side of things because not only not only about like what her experience has been with like the trials and that, but also to kind of get a little bit of an idea of the origins, because I feel like there's just this huge blank spot that I feel like explains a lot.
Yeah,
um
absolutely.
and I just my heart my heart goes out to her because just to be I'm not a mother, I'm an aunt. You're an
You'd be a
aunt,
great mom, Julie. You'd be so good.
I don't know. Watch me have a kid and snap. I'd be like, everybody be like, oh, she shouldn't have had a kid.
Shouldn't have done that, Ari.
No, but I mean, just getting to see Kira grow up. I'm, I am, I don't feel as not nearly as much as Heather does. Who is the mother, but just I'm very emotionally connected to her and her growing up. And I can't imagine going through what Alicia did as the aunt, not even the mother.
Yeah.
Like, and then I can't imagine being like the Aunt to Kira and walking in with her lying in a pool of blood, just asleep on the floor and just walking past her. I can't imagine that. I can't
Mm-mm.
imagine not
Well,
checking to see if she's okay. Are you still alive? Like, I mean, the slightest bump, it's like, oh my gosh, somebody bit you at daycare. It's like,
yeah.
oh my gosh, you bumped your head. Oh, honey, come here. It's like, but
Yeah.
these people are like literally a bloodbath with this child, and they just,
Well, and to wrap this up, guys, just think just one thing is that I was on a phone call a few years back with a sibling, and in the background, I could hear their partner beating, violently beating a dog. And I was so haunted and so upset by it that at that very moment, I would have gotten in a car and driven 15 hours away to go beat this person up physically. I thought to myself, if I was there, I would go to prison over this. And that's an animal that I'm hearing in distress and being tortured and caused violent pain to. So, with that in mind, guys, just picture this whole family seeing this as a pattern of normalcy. And how
I
many
feel like
kids
people would have gotten more upset and been more vocal had it been done to an animal.
could be? Could be.
There needs to be a PETA for children.
That's what I'm talking about, Julia. Exactly. And the fact that, PETA has such and I think it's important because I'm a big sucker for animals. But
Yeah,
here's the thing is that if we were as on top of this situation with the children and how, we're going to state this statistic again, 4 to 7 children every single day die in circumstances like this. Why is this not on the news every single day?
exactly. Because
Why?
it's hard to listen to, it's hard to swallow, it's tough, makes people feel uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
also, I feel like, kind of like we've talked about some of the responses that like homeschoolers have that get all up in arms against common sense laws. I feel like people also are touchy on these subjects and about getting too involved because of, well, what is freedom then? Where, I mean, as a family, as a parent, do you have the freedom? You won't have the freedom to punish your child as you see fit. La, 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 la.
I guarantee you that same Karen that was commenting on that the case from last week of sweet little Rayleigh Browning, guarantee you that she would probably side with the grandma in a heartbeat over this. Well, that boy drove her to the brink. That boy's behavior, guarantee it.
You have to get creative with punishment when let's not
forget. Let's not forget that there are children out there who desperately need protection and help. And our effort here with the Family Ties is to shed light on it, and also to get you guys riled up enough to get involved, to demand better of your law enforcement, and your judges and your courts. So this is a problem for all of us. And I mean, you see these commercials on TV for like Save the Little Children, and, you know, with Sarah McLachlan's sad little tune behind it for dogs. And I mean, we have all these things, and people will donate to it because they see it and it makes them uncomfortable or sad in the moment. We need things like that for this. Like make a 30-second or 1-minute clip about, you know, James Alex Hurley, and then say donate now to, you know, the Coalition for Responsible Home Education. That is successful. That would be successful if you saw those ads running on TV. I think if you can get people to stop and think about it, people do care. And we're not saying you don't, but
we're also not faced with this news every day. You're faced with random news stories that are like more on the horrific side, and it's more of like the novelty of the journalism side than it is for daily accounting of what's happening to children on a daily basis. It's those isolated stories that are news grabbing headlines. Like,
yeah. So anyways, we're going to leave it at that, but we would really appreciate it if you would go wherever you're listening, or if you're watching this on YouTube, ring the bell, do whatever you're supposed to do, hit like, rate, review, please. And where else can they find us, Julie?
You can find us at our website, www.thefamilytiespodcast.com.
Make a difference, guys. We want to make a difference. So we're going to keep you guys posted on all this stuff. We're not going to let it rest after we talk about it. We're going to check back in. We're going to be looking into these laws, and especially like with Rayleigh's law, that's not where this ends. We are going to go back, and we're going to show you discussions that we have with lawmakers. Like this is potently, specifically important work that I don't think enough people are doing. So we're gonna do something. This is so help us out, and please recommend us to a friend, and we hope you guys have a good day, night, or week, depending on when you listen to this. All right, it was good talking to you, Julia. I love you.
Always good talking to you.
Join the family,
you guys.
All right. Bye.
Bye.